Hello and welcome to iMoot 2016. This is Gareth, and on behalf of the iMoot team, I'd like to welcome you to Take Learning to the Next Level with a Portfolio by Kristina Hoeppner. Over to you, and thank you very much for all your time and putting those all together.
Thank you so much, Gareth, for starting me out on this wonderful New Zealand morning, or hopefully still nice spring evening in Europe. And yes, welcome to this first iMoot session. What we are going to look at, though, first is not entirely Moodle, as iMoot would suggest, but we are looking at a tool that you can integrate with Moodle to enhance the online learning experience. If you want to follow along, please feel free to do so directly here in Big Blue Button, or you can also follow the slides online if you would like to see them a little bit bigger, if the font size is too small here in the windows. Try to multitask between my two different computers. And then, of course, as you already know, if you want to tweet something, please feel free to use the hashtag iMoot16. And then I also put the 3 hashtags in there that are relevant for this session, which would be #Mahara, because that's the ePortfolio system we are going to talk about. Or you can also use @MaharaProject. And then my personal Twitter account is anitzerk, which is Kristina backwards. So without further ado, let's dive directly in. So one of the big terms in this presentation is, of course, portfolio. So what does a portfolio actually mean? Well, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, it is a selection of artwork, reproductions, etc. contained in such a case. Hence, a collection of samples of a person's work typically intended to convey the quality and breadth of his or her achievement in a particular field. This is just one of the many definitions that portfolio has, and this is the one that we are going to take and look at when we talk about a portfolio, or in that extension also an electronic portfolio. Now I'll have a short quiz for you. Namely, in which year do you think did this definition come up first? Was it in 1556, 1713, or 1813? You should be seeing a poll on your screen. Yep, you do. So we'll just wait a couple of seconds till everybody had time to participate, and that looks about it. Last 2 seconds to switch if you want to. And publishing the results, we see that the majority of you think that it was 1713, and then one person said 1813, and the correct answer is 1813. So 1556, just to briefly give you the answers for those numbers, is that there was just an isolated attestation of the term being used in Italian. And 1713 did actually come really, really close. So it was a very close second, because that seems to have been the first mention in English for portfolio. But just under the definition of a case or stiff folder for holding papers, prints, drawings, maps, etc. So at that time, it did not yet have this qualifier of also being used to showcase achievements in a particular field, and that's why I selected 1813 as the date that goes with that definition. So this, and as we can see with that, portfolio is not a new principle. It's not a new concept. It may not have been established first in education, but it has been around for quite a long time already. And it has been used in the sense that we are looking at it these days, in particular when we talk about portfolio work at school, at the university, or also in outside of the formal education context when we look at associations. So if we take a brief look at portfolios in the past, before the electronic age, and maybe even just a few years ago, actually, for a lot of people who have looked into portfolios already, is that portfolios were really, really heavy. They always needed to be lugged around because they were these big binders or contained the actual physical evidence. Just think of an artist going to an art gallery wanting to showcase their work, so they had to take their big drawings with them, and maybe even a sculptor. And of course, that makes it really hard to share your evidence, share what you have done with multiple people, because you always needed to reproduce those things. And that's where the electronic e-portfolios come in really, really nicely, because they allow us to create portfolios on any electronic device that you can think of these days. So not just the regular desktop or laptop computer, but you can also use a tablet or even your phone to start creating your portfolio, or at minimum collecting your evidence. And because you store it electronically, you can share it not just with one person, but with multiple people. And so there are a number of e-portfolio systems around that some have been in existence for over 10 years now. Others just come on the market really fresh. And the e-portfolio system that I'm going to talk about today is Mahara. It is an open source system like Moodle, and started development work actually 10 years ago. Can you think where the portfolio system might have come from, or do you know what Mahara stands for? If you do, or if you want to take a guess, please put it into the chat. Or you can also use your microphone, of course. Hello, Maureen. Nice seeing you here. Yes, you are correct. It is from New Zealand. Development work started back in 2006, and it was a university project or a tertiary project altogether. So a number of tertiary providers here in New Zealand came together and wanted to expand functionality into the more personal learning areas, rather than just using what a learning management system offers. And yes, correct, Teresa, it is a Māori word, and as Maureen said, it means thought or thinking. So it's aptly named for what we are actually doing with portfolio work, because we are not just showcasing things, but we do need to think about them. So an integral part of portfolio work is not just collecting the evidence, but reflecting on it, thinking about it, and making connections between that evidence, so that that you can learn from that and also improve your learning, or even share with other people. And I've been involved with Mahara since 2010 on more or less a full-time basis, because that's when I moved to New Zealand to work for Catalyst. And Catalyst is the main development company for Mahara. But we have, like Moodle does as well, contributors from around the world. So I actually started my Mahara journey back in 2008 at the University of Luxembourg, when we introduced the software to a Bachelor in Educational Sciences study program. So I've been involved for quite some time, and as you can still see, still like it, still like working with it and expanding the software and working with the community to make it better. Now, just very briefly about Mahara itself. It is a very versatile tool that you can use. Like Moodle, it has lots and lots of functionality, and like with any other big tool, not everybody uses all of those functionalities. So you can create a personal portfolio, but you can also create a portfolio in a group of people so that you can collaborate on portfolios. You can even use it for social networking activities and share your thoughts in a group, get in touch with other people, message them, check them out, what they have done, and really build a community on the site and then use the portfolios to work with. What I'd like to do now is just very briefly give you an idea of what you can use a Mahara portfolio for. And since we don't really have a lot of time to look at examples, I'll put a link into the chat where you can find the examples that I briefly mentioned in here so that you can take a closer look, see what people have done, how they are using the software, and what they make of it. Because the important factor is still the creation of the portfolio rather than the software itself. So one way of how people use a portfolio, and these examples, while they are taken from Mahara, also apply in a lot of cases to other platforms. So we are really kind of more focusing on what you can do with a portfolio rather than looking at how you would set that up in Mahara. So you can use a portfolio to showcase yourself, to establish an online identity for yourself. Before the session started, Guido asked whether students who already have a website should also be creating a portfolio. And so on a regular website, you you showcase yourself. You write a blog, you might share videos and also pictures and so on. And you can do, of course, similar things also in the portfolio. So it really depends on the purpose for it. But any website that you do create can also be a portfolio of yourself because you're making yourself known. So online identity, carving out your niche and showcasing yourself is one way of using a portfolio. Kind of going a bit more into the educational sector, we can use portfolios for projects, and that can be even collaborative projects. The example given here is that students at a Scottish rural college used Mahara to create a student newsletter. And they used Mahara because that was the tool they had available, that was easy for them to use, that worked for them, and where they could come together, collaborate on producing the stories and then publishing them to their campus community. Portfolios are also very often used for competency assessment or competency tracking, and especially in Europe, there's been quite a long discussion already around language portfolios. And using them in the beginning, of course, they were based on paper and they had templates in them so that you could fill the information in and track your progress that way. But of course, now these are slowly transferred into the online area. And showcasing your competencies, but also showing off the progress you've made is really, really good to be done in an e-portfolio, because you don't just look at a portfolio at that moment in time and see what you have produced, like during a quiz or what essay you have written, but you gather evidence over a longer period of time and then progress through that, reflect on it, improve things, and then showcase the improvement again and reflect on that again and see if the changes you've made really came to an improvement or whether you still need to make adjustments. And following on from that, of course, portfolios can also be used for assignments. And that's where we will get to the part where we have the connection to Moodle, because there is a plugin which makes it easy for you to grade a Mahara portfolio from directly within Moodle. And assignments, again, could be projects, they could be individual work, but using a portfolio, you have other tools available for the students to showcase the evidence, to work with it, to arrange it, and then also repurpose it potentially for another e-portfolio purpose, like a career portfolio, for example. You can also nicely track research progress. The example given here is from Wendy, a lecturer and PhD candidate at Massey University, who used her portfolio to track her notes and then also share them with her PhD supervisor so that they always knew where she was at, what she was researching and doing. And staying with the tracking, we can also use it as Internship Tracker. And that is a nice way of following students when they are in their internship, making sure that they are progressing, seeing if they run into any problems, and then also for the students to report back. Following on from that, we can also use it for career purposes. So you can set up your portfolio in order to get a job. Oftentimes these days, just mentioning that you were at the top of your class doesn't really help so much anymore, because we do want to see the evidence. We do want to see why you have gained the highest marks, or why a certain student is really the best, why we should be choosing him or her. And looking at existing evidence for that really helps us make a better assessment around that. And portfolios have been used for tenure and promotion for quite some time, oftentimes in the traditional paper and binder way, but they are slowly and more progressively transitioned into electronic portfolios. And a really nice way of showcasing what has been going on over the last review time, and also making it possible for the person in promotion to collect the evidence continuously and update the portfolio at any time, no matter whether they are at home or at work, and then keeping up with it instead of always needing that particular piece of paper. And last but not least, it is also quite heavily used for professional development purposes. For example, nurses need to keep a portfolio in order to keep up there with their registration, and doing all those things online really, really help keep things current, and also ideally not get to the point where the portfolio work is done the day before the portfolio is due, but more continuously throughout a year. Now, how does that actually all relate to Moodle? Well, with Mahara, you have the possibility to hook it up with Moodle directly. So, and this connection is actually called Mahura, just by combining the two names. And what you would do is you can connect Mahara to Moodle to go one way, and that is give your portfolios into Moodle. But you can also go the other way by exporting content from Moodle to Mahara. And this connection is established still at the moment via Mnet, but in the future, web services will take over and make it possible for you to connect those two systems with each other. And so, kind of looking at the way coming from Moodle into Mahara, what you can do is move assignment files over. You can keep forum posts in Mahara. You can take your own glossary entries into your portfolio. And you can also display the badges that you've earned in Moodle in Mahara via the Mozilla Backpack or the Open Badge Passport. And you can also add chats to it, and if plugin developers allow you to export content as well, then that content would also be taken over. And MNet allows you to have direct single sign-on between Moodle and Mahara, so you don't have to worry about logging in again, and so everything is very seamless. Just taking a brief look at what that looks like for assignments, and it is very similar also for the other types of content that you can export. So you would have your assignment, and then you see that export to portfolio link, and then can follow the steps that Moodle gives you in order to take your content into the portfolio. And then when you are on the portfolio site, you see the file directly there. So instead of having to download it to your computer first, you can send it straight from your learning management system. And the nice thing about doing that is really to keep your content, because the Moodle course might go away at some point, and therefore if you move your own content, especially form posts that you want to keep or glossary entries you've been working on, in your portfolio, you will have it for a longer period of time. So Maureen asks, can this be, Gareth, the first question, does the Mozilla Backpack still exist? Yes, it does, and it is going to stay alive. Digital Me in the UK took over from Mozilla Backpack. They just announced that either earlier this week or end of last week, and they are going to make some improvements to it, and so that we can still keep our badges in there. Can this be done if the institution doesn't actually host Mahara themselves? Yes, Maureen, you can establish the MNet connection between any Moodle and any Mahara. It doesn't matter whether you host it or somebody else, because it is all based on standard protocols, so that Moodle and Mahara don't have to sit on the same server or even need to be in the same network. As long as they can see each other, they can be connected. So in New Zealand, for example, we have a big Mahara instance, myportfolio.school.nz, that is used by, or over 1,700 schools are registered on that. And of course, they are all somewhere else. And we also have some schools that use it with Moodle. And so none of them sit on the same server. So that is easy. And Gareth, your next question, will marks or tutor comments on the assignment be exported to? No, that is not the case yet. So you only get the actual file that you upload. That will be saved in Mahara. All grading information and comments are still in Moodle, but that's where the other way around comes in. Interestingly, namely going from the portfolio into Moodle. So using portfolios for assessment, because what you can do is you create your portfolio in Mahara. You give the students the tasks that they should be completing there, and especially if Mahara is better suited for it, so that students need to collect various different pieces of evidence, maybe a video, their reflection, a journal, and really present that in context, then they can't really do that in Moodle very easily. And that's where the Mahara portfolio comes in nicely. Because what you can then do is you can download the Mahara, or you can install the Mahara assignment submission plugin in Moodle, and then connect it with your Mahara instance. And again, it can be any Mahara instance that you have access to, and that is connected to your Moodle site. And then when the student goes into the assignment, they see all the portfolio pages that they have created in Mahara. Then they can select the page they would like to use in that assignment. And when you go into the gradebook, you have a link directly to the portfolio right there. And once you click on it, you'll see the portfolio. You can leave feedback directly in the portfolio, or you can also leave feedback the regular way that you do in Moodle. And by using that assignment submission plugin, you actually use your standard Moodle grading methods and tools that are available to you. So you can use a rubric, you can also work with the marking flow, you can submit or you can have the students submit the assignment so that their portfolio is locked while you're looking at it, so that they can't make any changes. You can also return the portfolio to the students so they can make changes and then they submit it again. So all those standard Moodle assignment possibilities are available to you, and also kind of the workflows for making assignments available, cutoff dates, and so on. The one thing that we don't yet have is group assignments. So there still one student would need to create the portfolio in their own portfolio area, because we cannot yet submit a group portfolio created in Mahara to an assignment. Yes, Gemma. With the plugin, you can decide whether you want to give feedback in Moodle or on the portfolio itself. We do not currently sync up feedback that you've given in Moodle with the portfolio, because it wouldn't be quite clear where that feedback appears. Because in Mahara, you can give feedback either on a page, so on your portfolio page, so for the entire thing, or you can also give feedback directly on one piece of evidence. And that's why we still keep those two separate. So as a summary, just very briefly, because I see that we are coming to the half-hour mark, is that oftentimes Moodle and Mahara are being described in these two terms, that Mahara is yours and Moodle is theirs. Meaning Mahara is yours as the learners and Moodle is theirs as the teachers. Because in Moodle, as you all will know, it's up to the teacher whether to set up a forum, allow students to upload an assignment, and make other activities available. Whereas on the Mahara side, students decide what they want to put into their portfolio, how they want to work on it, how they want to design it, and how they want to use it. So even when you use the portfolio for classroom purposes, say you require a student to create a portfolio that you then assess, they can still do other things in Mahara as well. So they can reuse that exact same evidence in a portfolio created for internship purposes, or they can use it as a showcase at the end of the year. And it does not necessarily have to relate back to the same Moodle course. And it doesn't even have to be shared with the teacher who initially asked for the portfolio for the assignment. Because Mahara is a huge permissions framework where you as the learner can decide whether you want to share your portfolio with everybody around the world, with only people who have access to the platform, with only a teacher, with your friends, or with a group. So the learner is in control of their portfolio, and that's why we have Moodle is yours and Mahara is yours and Moodle is theirs. Gareth, I'm not sure if Moodle should be more like Mahara. They do serve different purposes, and that's why Mahara was developed, because Moodle does have its, Moodle or any other learning management system, it does have its place in the world of learning. So not just e-learning or blended learning, but kind of looking at learning in general. Because you can do certain things really, really well in Moodle. You can use the forum discussions, you can also do quizzes, so you can do online assessments or practice runs for activities. And more you can also do interactive things in Moodle. Mahara, on the other hand, was specifically developed not to be a learning management system or just to be a portfolio system used for assessment purposes. Because we did want to have more the approach of a personal learning environment where the learner is more in control of their learning. So often it can also be used more for non-formal or informal learning processes rather than just formal ones that you might put into Moodle. And so that means by using both of them, you get the best of both worlds. because you can still do all the things that you want to do as a teacher in Moodle, but also allow your learners a bit more freedom by introducing them to the portfolio work and allowing them to be probably a bit more creative than they would be able to be in Moodle itself. Yes, exactly, Gareth. Connected, different but complementary. And if you want to find out more about Mahara and also the connection then with Moodle, please take a look at the user manual. And there is a section on Moodle directly so that you have links on how to set it up. Because while the setup process is running through a few steps, it is not super difficult to go through because everything is described step by step in there. And then you also have those links in the course that I have set up. And of course, you can also trial Mahara on our demo site. And that runs on the latest version, which is Mahara 16.04 for April 2016. And really give it a test run there. Just be careful if all content is being deleted after a day, so that we can give people the opportunity to also test things with a fresh instance. And since Mahara is open source like Moodle is, you can of course download it at any point in time and install it on your computer if you just want to give it a go locally, or install it on a server and then run with it and give it a go with your learners. So I'm just putting some more links into the chat so that you can click on them directly. So that was the link to the user manual. And if you want to talk to Mahara people in person or online, of course you can sign up to the community and use the forums, but there are actually a bunch of events around the world throughout the year that you can participate in and meet up with people, learn about their experiences, ask your questions. And if you want to bookmark the presentation for later on, this is the link that allows you to go through it yourself. Now I think we're ready to take some questions. Teresa, your question about whether the owners are happy to use to have their portfolios taken as examples. Yes, because those are all public examples. So I did not link to any examples to which only I have access to and need a login to a site, but those are all publicly available. And you can also contact them. So a couple of those examples were taken from the Mahara newsletter. And that is also a great resource to find examples and find ways of how people around the world use portfolios, because generally we have 2, 3, or 4 examples in our newsletter. Newsletter comes out every 3 months, and the next one is due on the 1st of July. And there we generally share examples, new development work, upcoming events, and anything else that the community would like to share. So just a quick snapshot, only 4 times a year to get all the Mahara goodness from recent times. And Maureen, you ask, is there a way to submit a portfolio page or collection to the Turnitin Moodle plugin other than saving them as PDF first? No, currently there's no way of submitting a page or collection to Turnitin. That has been asked a couple of, or not just a couple of times, but a few times already. But there is no way to doing that yet. And part of the reason is that a lot of our users regard the portfolio as very individual, and so that already looking at it or reviewing the portfolio, they would see whether plagiarism has taken place or not. A portfolio is oftentimes different from, say, an essay that students have to write, because they do need to reflect on their own practices instead of just being able to copy and paste something from elsewhere. But of course, if Turnitin integration would be needed, then that can certainly be looked into, how that can be made, and we can talk afterwards. Not to my knowledge, Maureen. I haven't come across anybody really using it yet, except for either making a PDF out of it first, or maybe even uploading the HTML export. I'm not sure if that would work. So it's currently still a workaround, yes. And one thing that I didn't mention while you're thinking about any other questions that you might have is that the portfolio doesn't depend so much on the tool, while the electronic tool does have a big impact in how you present your content or how you create your portfolio. It is more important to actually have a good strategy behind the implementation of portfolios, because sometimes universities go about the way saying that students need to create a portfolio, but don't give them any tools at hand of how to do that, don't get them into the habit of creating or working on their portfolio continuously. And so the scaffolding and support for students and also faculty is really important to make portfolios work really well, instead of just letting them loose. And one website, let me see if I can find that, is the Catalyst for Learning website that was created in the US, but with contributions from a number of universities there, because they collected a lot of resources around getting started with portfolios, making progress, and also have use cases for staff development, staff support, continuous support, and how to enable people at an institution to work with portfolios. And this site is not specific to Mahara, but rather around the portfolio idea in general. Who of you is actually already using portfolios besides Teresa? Maureen, fantastic. And if I remember correctly, you're using it in a nursing background or in the nursing context. Would that be correct? Not teaching. And Maureen or Diljot, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, please feel free to grab the mic and share with us how you're using portfolios. Health and social care, that is quite a big area of where portfolios are being used, also in New Zealand. And that is a great way of just showing the continuous progression in that, and use it with learners, because they are required to then also use it later in their practice. Just trying to. Gemma doesn't quite work with portfolios yet, but you get a lot of questions from Moodle users. Yes. Healthcare does seem to be very active in the portfolio space. And having lots of impact there, and not just since the start of electronic portfolios, but already before then. I'm putting a link into the chat to the YouTube channel that we've started a little while ago for Mahara. It is a channel where we collect presentations from Mahara events that can be made available. And there are a number of them talking about portfolios in healthcare, so that you might want to check those out. If it's not quite obvious which ones those would be, you can also go to the conference page from last year, because we had a Mahara Hui in New Zealand last year. And there on Friday, you will see a bunch of presentations related to healthcare, and can check them out. They are generally about 20-25 minutes long, and the presentations, as long as we have them available, are linked there as well. So it's a lot about sharing experiences, finding those examples, and getting to know what other people are doing. I think we still have time for one final question. If you don't have any questions right now, please do feel free to send me an email or tweet later on, or even join the Mahara community. If you want to join Mahara and don't yet have an account, please put a little description in the recent box, so that when I go through the list of registration requests, that I know that you do want to explore and participate in the community, because like with Moodle, we do need to be a bit careful of who gets an account, because we have a lot of students signing up who should actually be signing up on their institution's Moodle site, Mahara site.
Hi, Kristina. This is Gareth from the iMoot team, and on behalf of the iMoot team, thank you very much for putting a really well-crafted, clear, crisp presentation. I can clearly see, just glancing at your course, how much effort has gone into this. So thank you very much on behalf of myself and the iMoot team for the amount of effort and your wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much, Gareth, and it was really nice having you in the session. Some familiar faces, some new faces, and I look forward to seeing you in the Mahara community as well. Now have a great rest of iMoot.